Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome to this qualifying reaction stream for qualifying for the 2020 Sakhir Grand Prix. Yes, of course, again, we are racing at the same track, just a different layout. It's not literally an oval layout, but it basically is, except for what, 2 or 3 corners on the track. It's basically flat out the entire way, barely having to use the brakes around this track. And we got a very, very interesting qualifying session. Some surprises, some great performances out there, which we'll get into right away with some of the top teams. And also some surprises, especially in qualifying too. But one thing I will say is after qualifying today, I think we are in for one hell of a Grand Prix because of how close the field is in terms of lap time. And because of how, the track is, a lot of it is just straights. You're going to have a lot of slipstreaming, overtaking, and just, the field being very close together. And especially when you consider that in the race tomorrow, it's going to be about a 59-second to 1 minute lap time. So it's going to be a great race tomorrow, and I think qualifying today really did prove that. So let's get into why exactly I say that. But before we get into the teams and who did really shine today and who didn't, let's first get into the results. So if you don't know the results from qualifying today, then here they are. So Valtteri Bottas gets pole position. George Russell second in the Mercedes. I'm sure you guys have heard the news that Lewis Hamilton has COVID, so that's why he didn't race or, isn't at the Grand Prix this weekend. So Russell took his spot and put in, for me, a great performance considering he's only had 2 days in the car. An amazing performance to be that close to Valtteri Bottas, who's been in that car for so long this season and at the team since, 2017. So a great, great performance there. Max Verstappen third. I think we can say that is expected considering, what the Red Bull car is. Charles Leclerc P4. I mean, we were making so many jokes about how Ferrari were going to be back there with Williams and may not even be the fastest Ferrari-powered team. And then Charles Leclerc goes and puts it in 4th place. What an amazing drive that was. Sergio Perez 5th, again proving why he should be in the Red Bull in 2021. Daniel Kvyat in 6th. That definitely was a surprise. No one predicted that. Daniel Ricciardo 7th, and then Sainz 8th, Gasly 9th, and Stroll in 10th. And then knocked out in Q2, some big names. Esteban Ocon in the Renault, Alex Albon in the Red Bull, Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari, Antonio Giovinazzi, a great performance, I think, from Antonio in the Alfa Romeo there, 14th. And then 15th, Lando Norris. Yeah, not a great day for McLaren. I think McLaren could have done a bit better, and we'll get into that later on. And then knocked down Q1, Magnussen, Latifi, Jack Aitken, who's replacing Russell for this weekend at least. Who knows about Abu Dhabi? Depends on Lewis Hamilton and how he gets on. And then Raikkonen 19th and Pietro Fittipaldi replacing Romain Grosjean, who of course thankfully is alive and mostly well. 20th on the grid, and Fittipaldi was going to start last anyway, so it didn't really matter where he qualified. Got to say though, Aitken, he also was one of the standout performers today for me. To be less than 1/10 of a second off of Latifi, and again, it's his first Grand Prix. He's only had 2 days in the car when Latifi had quite a few races. So another great performance there. But those are the results. Now, let's get into the teams. Of course, we'll start at the very top. Mercedes. Valtteri Bottas, all weekend, looked as though he probably did have what was required in his pocket to go get pole position and, what was required to be the quickest pace. In practice, he wasn't quite there, but you felt as though Valtteri was, again, he was going to be right there for qualifying for the battle for pole position, and that's exactly what he was. Because Lewis Hamilton's not racing, it's hard to say if he's done great today. I mean, he's done well, no doubt about it. He's on pole position. I hate to think of, how you could possibly not do well and get pole. But again, it's hard to say whether he's been great today because Lewis Hamilton isn't racing this weekend. His teammate for this weekend, George Russell, was great because, again, only 2 days in the car and was so close to pole position. But Bottas, I think all we can say is, yeah, good job. But I think tomorrow is really, more of a test for him because we know in the races he tends to really drop off in performance. And if he's going to show the team that he can absolutely, say if Lewis Hamilton didn't want to race, in a couple years anymore, I think, this is really Valtteri's chance to show that even if Lewis Hamilton is no longer at the team, he can still be I won't say a great driver for Mercedes, but a very important one, even if Lewis Hamilton is no longer with the team. So I really want to see Valtteri kind of not completely destroy everyone and dominate the race, but just prove a point that, if you take away, Lewis Hamilton from that team, Valtteri Bottas is actually very good, which I have been saying for quite a while, that Valtteri is actually a very, very quick and, very good driver. And the problem he has is that his teammate normally is Lewis Hamilton. So, we'll see in the race tomorrow. But yeah, good job from Valtteri Bottas today. Russell, though, great drive to be that close. And I know, of course, it's a short lap, but to be that close and to be very, very close to a pole position in that car after just, 2 practice sessions yesterday and then the short hour practice session today. I cannot emphasize how well he's done because, this car, I think another thing people kind of forget is it's not like he's stepping into another car that's a kind of grip-wise around the level of the car he normally drives. He's going from the worst car to the best car in, in the space of a week. That is a lot to get used to. It really is. So for him to, get to grips, no pun intended, straight away and to be right up there with Bottas, with Max Verstappen as well, and in fact out-qualifying Max Verstappen, I cannot emphasize how well he has done. Now, Russell is, I wouldn't say the same as Valtteri Bottas in terms of he drops off in the race compared to what he does in qualifying. But normally, Russell's best part of the weekend comes in qualifying. That's normally when he's at his absolute best. And in the race, he tends to, I wouldn't say drop off, but it doesn't tend to be as spectacular as what he does in qualifying. Now, of course, when he races in the Williams doesn't really have any grip. It does not handle its tyres very well, and that's why Russell does tend to fall back from his qualifying position sometimes. So, now he's in the best car. It's going to be a very nice test to see, can he, go up against a driver who's very good and beat him in the Grand Prix and really showcase, his skills in the Grand Prix, because we know how great he is in qualifying. We know that. Has been doing phenomenal basically every single weekend this season, maybe bar 1 or 2. This weekend, I think, is really the weekend where he can really show how good of a driver he really is. Forgetting about how experienced he is in this car. If he can go out there tomorrow, get into the lead, win the Grand Prix comfortably, then he can then, showcase how good he is, prove to everyone that he is absolutely good enough to be in this car, say replacing Hamilton or replacing Bottas once they eventually go, whenever that is. And then we know, what level he's at. Because when he's been racing for Williams, we know he's a very good driver, but we don't know how good he is yet because of the car he's in, but also the teammates he's had have not really been that good or representative. Valtteri Bottas, no matter what you say about him, yes, he does have faults, but, Valtteri, a lot of the times, maybe not in the races, But in qualifying, Valtteri gives Lewis Hamilton a right run for his money. So for Russell to be that close, I mean, he's already proven how good of a qualifier he really is, to be very close to out-qualifying a driver in Valtteri Bottas, who is another driver on a Saturday that tends to be, stunningly quick. So I'm just hoping tomorrow Russell, because I'll admit, I am a fan of him. I think he is a lot better than people give him credit for. I think Russell is absolutely a world champion in the making. He absolutely is, in my opinion. Just look at his career since he, started driving in proper race cars. He has been prolific up until, Formula One. And I think in the Williams car, he's done pretty well, considering how shit that team has become and how poor the cars have been. So I'm just really hoping that he can prove what I kind of know already, but I'm really hoping he can prove tomorrow just, how good he is. And he's not just going to be some, upper midfield or midfieldish driver, maybe like, a Lance Stroll or someone like that. No disrespect to Stroll. But I think Russell is absolutely in that Verstappen, Leclerc, Carlos Sainz. I think he's in that bracket. And I think tomorrow he can absolutely prove that. And I'm really hoping he does, because if he can just get absolutely everything out of himself tomorrow, I think that'll just completely transform his career. Because then, let's say Lewis Hamilton races next weekend in Abu Dhabi, which I think most likely he will. I don't really see how he won't. It's going to take a bit of a shock, I think, for him not to race in Abu Dhabi, the final race. Everyone then will know, if he goes and wins the race comfortably, right, this is a guy that needs to be put in this team and in this car. Whether it's alongside Lewis Hamilton, replacing Lewis Hamilton, doesn't really matter. Yeah, really hope tomorrow he just bangs out a great performance and wins the Grand Prix. Because I want to see this guy, even if he doesn't move up to the Mercedes seat, but just move up the grid, because he does not deserve to be in a Williams. He's such a good driver compared to that car. Got to be in a lot better of a car so we can really see on a consistent basis how good of a driver he really is. And I really hope he gets that chance. And hopefully, if he wins the race, then he'll get that chance very, very soon. Anyway, let's go on to Red Bull next. Max Verstappen third. He probably could have done better, you argue. But I think, considering what I think of Red Bull this season, and I don't think Red Bull have that good of a car at all, really. I don't really see where their car is really that good in any area. I think he's done very well today. Again, if you look at the time difference between him and pole man Valtteri Bottas, yeah, he's close, but it's a miracle he's that close, because I don't think the Red Bull car, has the right really to be that close to the Mercedes. So another great performance by Max Verstappen. Alex Albon P12. It's not really a surprise. I still don't get why Red Bull are most likely going to keep him in that car. I mean, it's kind of... It really is astonishing that a team this well run compared to other teams is going to make such a poor decision, even though the evidence clearly shows that Albon is not the man for that seat. I'm not saying, go and put someone alongside Max who, is going to beat Max or anything. But, if you're looking at people who can be a solid and very good even number two to Max Verstappen, it's not Albon. It's, for me, the best option is Sergio Perez, who again today was great. Albon, though, again, just lacking that, that performance that really shows why Red Bull are going to or want to keep him. He just lacks that, I don't know, that, I wouldn't say decisiveness. He just lacks that star power. You just don't see I don't see it really. I just don't see, that star power in Alex Albon. I just don't see Alex ever being anything. I mean, yeah, if he's given a chance for next season again, I mean, it will help his confidence in that. But is Alex Albon next season going to be any better? Not really. I mean, if the Red Bull car's a bit better, then maybe his results will improve. But will his performance compared to Max Verstappen improve? Probably not. I don't really see why Red Bull would keep him. I just don't see it. He's not doing the job. He's not doing well enough. He should have been today. I'm not saying today he should have been, right up there for the fight for pole. We know he's not as good as Max Verstappen, but he should have been, for me, around 4th or 5th, maybe 6th at the absolute worst. Considering how short the lap is, and we know that he isn't as good as Max Verstappen, so it's, there's no point, trying to expect him to beat Verstappen. But again, considering how short the lap is, he should have been 4th, 5th, or 6th on the grid. But, P12, that's just really poor. It really is. I mean, he almost got knocked down Q1 as well, so it's not like that was just, he made a mistake on one of his laps and ended up in that position. He was not really quick at all through the entire session. So, yeah, I think for today, very poor from Albon. And to be honest, I don't really see it getting any better tomorrow because the Red Bull in a straight line is not very quick, as we know. Tomorrow is going to be all about straight line speed. So I don't really see how Albon makes his way through the pack because, he doesn't really have the pace, the skill set, and the straight line speed to go, from 12th up to, say, 5th or 6th place. If he does, somehow, then great, but I just don't see how he does, and I think he is most likely going to finish at the back end of the points at the absolute best. Max Verstappen, though, it's hard to say. I think both Mercedes are starting on the medium compound, and Max Verstappen is starting on the soft. So Max will get a great start. He is, of course, on the clean side of the grid, so he should, in theory, be the one to look out for at the start in terms of who is leading at the end of the first lap. But I don't really know what's going to happen with the tyres around this track layout. I mean, we know in Bahrain, because of the surface and sometimes the temperature, tyre wear is quite high at times, but again, around this layout with, say, less long, fast corners, again, it's hard to say what's really going to happen in terms of tyre wear, but I think Max for the start definitely is looking very strong. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he was leading at the end of the first lap, but in terms of him keeping the lead, going to be pretty hard. Pretty hard for him to keep that because, again, the Red Bull with the Honda in the back of it, it's not very slippery compared to those Mercedes. So, yeah, going to be a pretty tough race for Max Verstappen, but let's hope he can try and put up a fight anyway. Next up, Ferrari. By the way, guys, don't worry, I'll come to you guys in just a moment once I finish Ferrari before we go on to the midfield. Ferrari, wow, what a day. Who would have thought this? 4th place with Charles Leclerc. When he put that lap in that originally at the time was in 2nd place and so close to a provisional pole position, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Couldn't believe it. That lap, I would love to see an on board of that lap because I just don't know where he, found the time. But it's not just this weekend, is it? It's, if you go back to the race at the Nürburgring, if you go back to the race in Portimao in Portugal, at Imola, this guy, either his car, like Sebastian Vettel has said in the past, is a completely different car to his. Either it's that or Charles Leclerc is finding lap time from places that, we just can't even fathom because I just don't understand how he was able to qualify that high up. I mean, maybe you could understand why he qualified in the top 10 because, again, even though the Ferrari is not supposed to work around here, really, the lap time is so short that at least he can be, you know, close enough to maybe make that slight difference to get in the top 10. But, you know, 4th place and only, what, quarter of a second off pole position? I mean, that shouldn't even be possible in a car like this, but he somehow did it. I don't think in the race tomorrow, though, he will maintain 4th at all, because, again, the difference between the cars in terms of lap time is so small. And any car that gets in the slipstream with DRS of this car, you know, Perez, the Renaults, the McLarens, the AlphaTauris, you know, Lance Stroll and the other Racing Point, they're going to overtake him. Just like the Grand Prix in Bahrain, where Leclerc made a great start at I think the second start of that Grand Prix, but then got passed by all of those cars. And then ended up finishing 10th and was lucky, to be honest, to finish in the points. That's probably what's going to happen tomorrow. But again, Charles Leclerc proving how special of a driver he is, because what he did today, I don't understand how he did it. It shouldn't really be possible. Sebastian Vettel, though, he qualified in 13th place, had a bit of a messy session, aborted his second to last run. For some reason, I don't know why, and then came out and did another lap, but failed to get into Q3. Probably could have if he hooked up good enough laps early on in Q2. But I want to say it's hard to say with Vettel, like, you know, how he's done today. Because, you know, him qualifying 13th, coming into this weekend, you would have thought, you know what, that's pretty decent considering where we thought they were going to be. But then you see Charles Leclerc up in 4th place and you think, well, could he have got into the top 10? Again, it's hard to say, but I mean, let's just see what happens tomorrow with him. I'm assuming Sebastian will probably start on a harder compound tyre and just see what happens. I don't think, though, at the start he's going to be anywhere near the top 10. Because, again, cars behind him that can get in the slipstream, they will be able to overtake very easily. So it's going to be a pretty tough race for Sebastian and Ferrari in general. Again, even though Charles Leclerc qualified 4th, I really don't see how Charles Leclerc can finish even in the top 7 tomorrow unless there's a lot of retirements or, retirements plus, people just falling off the track and letting Leclerc up into high positions and not being able to recover, kind of like Valtteri Bottas, the Bahrain Grand Prix. So yeah, we'll see. But even though they've had a pretty good day today, Ferrari, I think tomorrow is where the pain is going to finally begin around this circuit. But before we go on to the midfield teams and that 3-team battle for 3rd in the Constructors and how all those teams did, let me come to you guys in the chat. To see what you all think in terms of these 3 teams. Hold on a minute. Something isn't quite working. Let me just do this. Because the chat doesn't appear to be working for me. Or it doesn't appear to be working on my, my live dashboard. So I'm having to go to the actual stream itself. Right, now I can see you guys. Yeah, here we go. Right, so let me read out some comments. I don't know why the live dashboard chat isn't working. Don't know why that is. Anyway. Josiah, Vettel, it's not his fault, but come on. Conker, great to see you. Says, should be a good race. It should be a mental race because, well, it's basically going to be like an IndyCar race. Let's be honest. That's what it is going to be. Probably with not as much overtaking as you get at a IndyCar oval race because these cars are very poor at following, and they are too wide. But it's going to feel a bit IndyCar-ish tomorrow for sure. Right. Sebastian in the chat says, give the man a good car and he'll fight for the title. I don't think people are respecting what he's done this season in a terrible car. Had to be driver of the season. I wouldn't call him driver of the season. He's done very well. I'd say top 5 probably of the season. I don't know where he'd be in that top 5, but you've got to also think of Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton, I know he's had the best car, but he's just elevated to a new planet this season. Max Verstappen has been amazing in a car that is not a top car at all. It's a midfield car at best. Of course, Leclerc, also Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly. Maybe Leclerc would be, I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th, so, somewhere there. I think the top 2 spots for me would have to go to Hamilton first and then Max Verstappen second. And then after that, yeah, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Gasly. You'd have to debate that for the rest of the positions. Right. Let me just quickly read some other comments, then we'll go on to McLaren and Renault. Joseph says, I think Red Bull should keep Albon. He's a good young talent. Don't get the hate. People aren't nice to him. It's not hate, and I think hate is too strong of a word that you're using there. It's not hate. It's just, I think it's frustration that Red Bull, they're not making the right decision. Albon is a nice guy, and on his day, he can be definitely a good Formula 1 driver. Problem is, his day does not come around anywhere near as much as it needs to for him to justify a seat, not just at Red Bull, but in Formula 1. So, that is why I think a lot of us want him, to not be in that seat anymore, because he doesn't deserve to be in that seat. He's not done what has been expected of him. Again, we're not saying he needs to beat Max Verstappen. We're not saying that at all. But his results have not been good enough, considering the circumstances for him in that team, with his teammate being, who he is. And that's why, for me, I want Sergio Perez in that car, because Sergio Perez has been one of the top, 6 or 7 drivers, I'd say, this season. And I think Sergio deserves a chance. Sergio's been one of the best midfield performers in the last, not just 10 years, but 20 years. I think, considering what he's done in the cars he has been given, pace-wise. I just think Sergio deserves his chance. I mean, Albon, is he good enough to be in Formula 1? I think that is up for debate, but I think, on certain performances, you'd say yes. On certain performances, you would say no. But I just don't think he deserves to be in that Red Bull. I just don't think he is at that level, and I'm not sure he ever will be. I mean, I'm hoping I get proved wrong by him maybe next year or the year after, kind of like Pierre Gasly's done, but until that day, this is my opinion of him. So I hope he proves me wrong, but I don't think he will. Hello to Ronan Brady in the chat. Right, let's have a look, see if there's any final. One of my phones makes a noise. Stephen Mooney says Russell will feel disappointed about P2 with such a small margin, but it was a great lap and a fantastic weekend so far. I mean, yeah, when it's that close, you're always going to be like, maybe at this corner I could have clawed that time that's missing in my favour to get the pole, and you're always going to be like that. But I think, honestly, going into the race, he should be really buoyed by how great he did, and should go in with a lot of motivation of, was it 87 laps tomorrow, I think? Going to be, I won't say a long race because of how short the lap is, but going to have quite a while to, get in the groove of things, and then take the fight to Bottas. Right, one final one, then we'll go on to McLaren. Edward Wood, interesting name. Russell did a great job considering he is 6'2" and only had limited time in the car. That's another thing. I think in practice yesterday, they had to readjust his position in the car because he was having some pain, I believe, in his shoulder. So again, this shows you how great he's done considering, what little time he's had in the car, but also the adjustments he's had to make and the team have had to make. So, again, great performance. Hopefully carries it through into tomorrow's Grand Prix. Anyway, let's go on to McLaren and the other teams in that third place fight for the Constructors' Championship. McLaren, again, disappointing in qualifying. Not as disappointing as the Bahrain Grand Prix last weekend. I think that weekend they probably could have done even better, potentially, than they could have done, I think, in this qualifying session. But, yeah, 8th for Carlos Sainz and 15th for Lando Norris. Not quite what they were hoping for. I think what they were hoping for today was essentially 2 cars into the top 10. I don't think they really cared where they finished up because, as you can see on that bottom scroll, they're 17 points clear of racing points. So they do have a slight bit of breathing room. So they don't need to, qualify 5th and 6th and be getting the absolute best result needed. But yeah, 8th and 15th is a bit of a worry for them. But we've seen how quick they can be in the races. So I'm expecting them to be, have both cars up in the top 10. Both drivers are great overtakers. Yeah, I think McLaren, in terms of scoring points for both cars, I think they'll be fine. Just where will they end up? I don't know. I have no idea. I think Carlos Sainz is likely to finish around 6th or 7th. Then Lando should come in with, a couple points. So, yeah. But we'll just see what happens. But I think definitely, 2 cars in the top 10 is very likely with this team because McLaren have always, in the races compared to qualifying, always gone that little bit further with their performance compared to what they've done in qualifying. And if they were to score, say, 10 points as a team tomorrow, then, if Racing Point don't score that many, McLaren, I would say, then are likely to say to themselves that, as long as we don't have a really bad or properly bad weekend in Abu Dhabi, that they've got 3rd in the Constructors just about wrapped up. So, yeah, we'll see. But I think I said this last week, this Grand Prix is the decider for me because of McLaren's 17-point advantage over Racing Point and because Renault, if the Renault are going to strike back in this battle, this is the Grand Prix where it's got to happen because this is probably, out of the final 2 track layouts, this is the one where Renault have, I think, the best chance to score the most points possible. So, yeah, it's going to be a big day tomorrow. Big day. If McLaren do tomorrow what they kind of did last week, then I think it's McLaren's to lose, hopefully. From their point of view, they'll have a better race than they had qualifying session. I'll go on to Renault. Just like last week, Renault are just not, they're not doing it. They're just not getting the performance out of the car that we were expecting to see, but also that they were expecting and they need to have. Because, they're 27 points off 3rd in the Constructors. This weekend, they've got to bang out a great result. And I would say they've got to score at least 20 points. But, what was it? P7 and P11? That's nowhere near good enough. Nowhere near. And I know in the race tomorrow, they could easily improve and, maybe Ricciardo finishes in the top 5 and Ocon finishes, say, 8th or something. But again, it needs to be at least 20 points for Renault tomorrow. As it stands, it would only be 6. That would put them basically out of that fight for 3rd in the Constructors. Tomorrow, they've got to produce, as a team, their best performance really ever. Because I don't think Renault have an excuse to finish 5th in the Constructors. And I think, honestly, this, if they were to finish 5th in the Constructors, I think, like I said last week, it really sum up this team since 2016. Loads of potential. Certain Grand Prix, they look great. But ultimately, at the end of a season when the results come in, especially for the last couple seasons, disappointing. And 5th in the Constructors would be a very disappointing season considering how quick of a car they do have. I don't think they have overall the quickest car out of those 3 teams. I think that is the Racing Point, which is the quickest out of those 3. But, if you look at Renault since, say, the Belgian Grand Prix, they have no excuse to be 5th and over a race win points-wise behind 3rd in the Constructors, which is McLaren. No excuse whatsoever. So, yeah, tomorrow they've got to get a great result. If they don't, then they're done. They're done. And I'd say this season has been disappointing for Renault if they do finish 5th in the Constructors. And you may say, they've got a couple podiums this season. The pace has been better. They've been finishing in higher positions in the Grand Prix a lot compared to last year. And I totally get that. But you look at them compared to Racing Point and McLaren, Renault, considering the car they have, the circumstances, Renault should be finishing 3rd in the Constructors. They should. And it would be a massive shame if they didn't finish there. And I think it would really prove why Daniel Ricciardo is going to McLaren for 2021. Because, again, Renault, they have so much potential as a team. But when it comes to actual consistent results, it just doesn't materialise. And it has to in this Grand Prix tomorrow. And, of course, in the final one. If they are to improve on 5th in the Constructors. Racing Point next up. Racing Point, pretty good. Sergio Perez 5th, just like last week. Another great performance. Lance Stroll finished up in, was it 10th place? I think in the end. Racing Point, I think, did the best they could. Lance Stroll, the reason I don't think he was as high up as he could have been is because Lance just doesn't really go well around this circuit. I don't know what it is. He just doesn't really have a good handle on the track. Today was actually his best ever qualifying performance at this Grand Prix circuit. Just shows you how, poor he is here compared to, say, a place like Monza or Baku, places like that. So, Racing Point, don't really think they could have done any better today. I think for them, also, kind of like Renault, not as much as Renault, but kind of like Renault, they've got to bang out a very good result here to make sure that McLaren aren't too far ahead of them going into the final race, because I do believe at the final Grand Prix that Racing Point will have the quickest car outside of, Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen. I think Racing Point will have a car definitely quick enough to finish in between 4th and a 7th place with both cars. So I think tomorrow, if they can outscore McLaren by, say, 5 to 10 points and then bring that gap down a bit so that, when they go into that final race, if they do have the car I'm expecting them to have pace-wise, if they, do have it, then they can go there, do the race, bang out the result, and hopefully that'll be just about enough for them to finish 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. But as I've said, it all, for me, boils down to this Grand Prix, because you're not really going to get many changes of position, put it that way, on the track in Abu Dhabi, because you can't really overtake at all. So, yeah, I think this is the culmination of that battle. I think McLaren will probably win it in the end. By the time the season ends, I think McLaren will probably win it by, say, 10 points, something like that. And then Racing Point 4th and Renault 5th, like it is now. But I think the gaps will close between the 3. I don't think it'll, be as far out as it is now. But yeah, I think McLaren will just about get it, because I think McLaren's performances in the race, in terms of just being so good at getting the most out of what they have compared to Racing Point and Renault. You know, two teams, Racing Point and Renault, who have had quicker cars, but of certain races, they've really failed to deliver the points haul they should have got. McLaren, a lot of the time, get what they deserve. So, yeah, I mean, tomorrow is going to just be a mental Grand Prix, I think, as Tonka said in the chat. But I think this battle, for me, is what I'm looking out for, because it's the most important battle left. Because, you know, the difference for one of these teams between finishing 3rd and 5th, it really could decide their future going forward as a team. So, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, tomorrow's race, we get a great battle between the McLarens, the Renaults, and the Racing Points. But before I get on to the final few teams, I'm going to come back to you guys in the chat to see what you guys have to say about these teams. And then we'll go on to the final 4 teams. AlphaTauri, who had a great day today. Then, of course, Alfa Romeo, Haas, and Williams. Brooksfoot asks, why did Norris not finish his lap, his hot lap? It's because, basically, and he said on radio, on the team radio, that the way the team orchestrated the session was just a mess. It was just a complete mess. They, you know, in terms of when he did runs and, you know, traffic and all of that, it just was a complete mess, and he couldn't really build up any consistency, which is why he ended up 15th. I think tomorrow he'll be fine. He'll probably finish in between 7th and 10th. That's probably the range where he can finish. But yeah, today was definitely disappointing for him. No doubt about that. Max will win tomorrow, says Sandman. It's very possible. It's very possible. I mean, if he can outperform his car as much as he's done this season and continue that tomorrow, which he will, I don't see why he can't at least contend for it and finish, you know, at least 2nd in the Grand Prix. Ronan Brady, I think Ocon is still so overrated. To be honest, I don't think anyone really rates him that highly anymore, because this season has proved that Ocon, you know, just a midfield driver. Don't know why people wanted him in the Mercedes so bad. If he got put in that car this season, he would have got absolutely fucking smashed by Lewis Hamilton. I mean, he's been smashed at times this season by Daniel Ricciardo, who is a driver who, pace-wise, in his last few Grand Prix at Red Bull, and even in the last year or two at Red Bull, was getting smashed in qualifying by Max Verstappen. So I don't know why people think Ocon would do any better than Bottas. But yeah, I don't think anyone really rates him anymore. And he also asks, same thing. Is the circuit better than what you thought? No, I'm actually a bit disappointed. I think it will provide us a very interesting and exciting race because, again, of the amount of straights they are, and you know, the amount of slipstreaming going on. You're just going to have a whole pack of cars very close together for a long period of time. That's going to be great. But in terms of a racetrack for just watching cars go around on a single lap, it's not a good track at all. It's definitely a track for for an actual wheel-to-wheel race rather than qualifying. Because I thought today's session, not in terms of, the excitement of who was going to finish where, but in terms of watching the cars on track, it wasn't very exciting. The cars weren't exactly being pushed to the limit. I mean, the cars, the drivers were doing the best they could with what they have, but, not like watching qualifying at Spa or Suzuka, is it? Right, let me find one final one, then we'll go on to AlphaTauri. Jack Stedman, I think it is. Do you think Russell will get a Merc seat soon because of his performance today? Maybe not today, but I would say certainly if he wins the race tomorrow, I think that guarantees him a seat, because I just don't see how they wouldn't give him a seat. you know, come in on your first weekend of the team on short notice or shortish notice, and win the Grand Prix. I mean, that's pretty great if you ask me. So I don't see why they wouldn't give him a seat. I don't see why they wouldn't. We'll see. By the way, just before I go on to the rest of the teams, don't forget to subscribe, guys, for more content like this. I will be live tomorrow with a race reaction to the Sakhir Grand Prix at around 8 PM UK time, which should be about an hour to an hour and a half after the race finishes. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Hit the notifications bell. Hit the like button as well for this video. And don't forget to share the hell out of this video. Absolutely everywhere. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe for that tomorrow. Because yeah, can't wait to talk to you guys about whatever happens in the Grand Prix tomorrow. Because I think we are going to have a pretty exciting Grand Prix. Plenty of overtaking. To the point where I don't even think we need DRS tomorrow. I think there's going to be that much. I mean, there was plenty with DRS on the track we had, or the track layout we had last weekend, so I can't imagine what it's going to be like tomorrow. Anyway, let's go on to the final 4 teams. AlphaTauri, a great performance today, and I will say, I don't know if it's because of an upgrade, but ever since the race at Imola, excluding the Turkish Grand Prix, where I think they really were caught out by the cold, wet, greasy conditions, I don't know why AlphaTauri have just suddenly become so quick. They've had both cars in the top 10 in 3 of the 4 last Grand Prix. At Imola, they were, what, 4th and 7th, I think? Or 4th and 8th? I mean, that's an amazing performance there. And then, obviously, Turkey, they were shit. And they basically said that as well. Last weekend, they were, what, 8th and 10th, I think, in qualifying. Then here, you know, again, 6th for Danny Kvyat, which is an amazing performance. And then Pierre Gasly, surprisingly, by the way, getting out-qualified by Daniil, down in, was it 8th place? Or 10th place? I can't remember exactly. Yeah, both cars into the top 10 again. I don't know what it is about AlphaTauri lately, but they've just been stunningly quick in qualifying. The only problem is that hasn't quite translated over to the race, because normally with AlphaTauri, or when they were Toro Rosso as well, they tend in qualifying to be decent, not great, or very good, and then in the race they'll then be very good, if not great, for whatever fight they're in, and then get a very good result. Now, you'd think, you know, considering how great their qualifying performance has been as of late, you'd think AlphaTauri have scored a shitload of points, but they haven't. I mean, Kvyat scored 12 at Imola, which was good. Turkey, they scored none. Didn't deserve to either. The last Grand Prix in Bahrain, Gasly got really lucky to finish in 6th place. So yeah, they've not scored as many points as I was expecting, considering their qualifying positions. So I'm hoping tomorrow they can actually, you know, get a strong double points finish, you know, scoring, say, at least 10 points, because considering how quick they've been on a single lap, they do deserve it. I mean, they're not going to catch Ferrari anymore in the Constructors, which is a shame, because I think they do deserve to finish ahead of Ferrari. They've been a much stronger team than Ferrari have. But, yeah, hopefully tomorrow they actually translate this great single-lap speed into something for once, instead of just, you know, underwhelming compared to what they've done in qualifying. Last 3 teams, Alfa Romeo, Antonio Giovinazzi, as Chelsea go 1-0 down to Leeds. I'm currently watching. You guys know I'm a Chelsea fan. Yeah, what a great start that is. Anyway, Alfa Romeo. Antonio Giovinazzi, I thought today was great to qualify up in 14th place. Again, new track for everyone. You'd expect the experienced lot of drivers, you know, like your Kimi Räikkönens, to really, you know, excel at getting to grips early on with a new layout. But Giovinazzi today was very, very good. And to be honest, I've said this before, if that Ferrari power unit was just that little bit stronger, could have easily finished in the top 10 today. He really could have. So yeah, I think great performance by him. Raikkonen, I thought was a bit disappointing today. I'm not sure if he could have got into the second part of qualifying, but definitely 19th was poor compared to what he should have been able to do. Yeah, Antonio did great, and considering how quick Alfa Romeo normally are in the races, if there is some chaos, he might be able to nick a point, Antonio, because Alfa Romeo have been pretty quick during the races compared to what they've done in qualifying. So, yeah, watch out for Antonio Giovinazzi. And also, he's been one of, if not the best starter this season in terms of gaining positions. So, yeah, look out for him. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he finished around P10, 11, 12. Definitely a possibility if we do get that chaos that may or may not happen. Next up is Haas F1. Here you can see Pietro Fittipaldi, who did okay considering, he's pretty inexperienced and, had to inherit Grosjean's car, so I'm sure that would have been on his mind, and in a pretty tough, week or so for the team. I thought he did pretty well pace-wise. I wasn't expecting really anything from him because I haven't really seen anything from him. So yeah, he did okay, and he was always going to qualify last because he had to inherit all of Grosjean's penalties for new parts, so he was never going to do anything really in this session. Kevin Magnussen qualifying in 16th place. It's okay, nothing special. And finally, Williams, 17th and 18th, that's okay. If Russell was in the car, though, I think Williams probably could have got a car in 11th or 12th place. That's just the way it is. I thought Jack Aitken did very well to be, that close. Very, very close, if you can see my fingers, to out-qualifying Latifi. And I thought he did pretty great. I'd love to see what he does in the race tomorrow. And by the way, again, with it being such a short lap and with the amount of close following we are bound to get tomorrow, with Williams as quick as they are in a straight line, don't be surprised if Williams are up there in, 12th, 13th place at times. Because, again, they'll have the straight line speed to really, stay with cars that are a lot quicker in the corners. So, yeah, look out for them because I think they'll be pretty strong at certain points tomorrow, mainly because of that straight line speed. But that is basically it for today's stream. Let me quickly, though, go back to you guys in the chat just to read off some final comments, and then I'll get to the end and also let you guys know, again, the schedule for tomorrow. Right, let me find a few comments here quickly. Crystal Racing, Danny Kvyat, sorry, suddenly woke up. I wish he had done this a bit sooner, these great qualifyings, because I think he would have scored a few points more for the team in the first half of the season that really could have helped him keep his seat. I still think he deserves to keep it. I don't see why Yuki Tsunoda really should get that seat. I don't think he's quite F1 material as of yet. So, yeah. Right, final few comments. Get to them. Crystal Racing says Verstappen and Leclerc outstanding again. Albon, O'Dear, Ocon average again. Brennan Brady asks, do you think Jack Aitken has a future in F1? The only way I see him having a future is if he scores points tomorrow. If he, again, a few cars retire and he produces one hell of a performance and gets a point or maybe 2 points, then I think that would be maybe enough to see him in a F1 car, say, in 2022 as Chelsea miss an open goal somehow. But, even if he does well, beats Latifi tomorrow, but finishes 13th or 14th, I just don't see it happening because there's too many good drivers out there. I mean, the quality of drivers now is so good compared to what it was back in, say, 2015 when we had Felipe Nasser and Ericsson on the grid. and, Roberto Merri and Will Stevens and people like that. The quality, driver-wise, has gone up so much. I mean, if Jack Aitken was around 5 years ago, this Jack Aitken, he would have been on the grid 5 years ago, without a doubt. He would have been on the grid and probably would have been a midfield driver for a 2 or 3 year period. But in this current climate, I just don't see how he gets a seat because there's too many good drivers out there. There really is. I mean, look at this weekend. You've got Lewis Hamilton not racing. Fernando Alonso's coming back next year. And then you've got Mick Schumacher coming in. Also, remember, you've got Callum Ilott, who I think really does deserve an F1 seat in 2022 if he keeps up how good he, has been as of late. There's just not enough seats. I mean, if there was, say, 26 or 28 cars, he probably would get a seat, but I just don't see how he can. Simply because, not that he's not good enough, it's just that he's not as good as the other drivers who are good enough. You know what I mean? Right, couple more, then we'll get to the end. Ronan Brady says, I hope Albon gets the Alpha seat because then Perez is still in F1. Well, I think that'd be better if they were to get rid of Kvyat, which is looking unfortunately likely. I would rather Albon and Gasly at AlphaTauri rather than Gasly and Tsunoda, to be honest. And then, keeps Perez in F1, which would be great. But will that happen? Probably not. I mean, it's looking as though, and I really hope we get a nice surprise that it's Perez in the Red Bull. But what I'm hoping is that, Verstappen, Perez at Red Bull, and then AlphaTauri, it's Gasly and Kvyat. Because I think that, in terms of pure performance, I think that is what is the most deserved lineup. But it's most likely going to be Verstappen and Albon and Gasly and Tsunoda. Right, let's find one final good one, if I can. And the final one is from Rooksfoot, who says, didn't Toto state that Ocon was released from Merc duties when he had no seat back, when hoping might encourage other teams to pick him up without Merc influence? Thing is, with Ocon, is if he didn't have that Merc influence, would Ocon be on the grid for 2020? Probably not. I mean, I think he deserves to be on the grid, but I think that with Ocon, and it gets said way too many times, yes, we get it. He beat Max Verstappen, what was it, 2014. We get it. Not 2014 anymore. The world is a much different place, and Esteban Ocon is definitely not beating Max Verstappen anytime soon, if ever. He's coming to Formula 1, and if you look at his time in Formula 1, he's not been bad. He's definitely been good, but he has not been as good as people say he's been. Definitely not worthy of being in a Mercedes or even, for me, a Renault. I think if Pierre Gasly had been in the Renault this season, I think Renault are in a much stronger, better position. If you look at Ocon's career, simply Ocon has not been anywhere near as good as the hype suggested. Wasn't as good as Sergio Perez at Force India / Racing Point. And this season at Renault, going up against a pretty good driver in Daniel Ricciardo, someone who is great to prove yourself against as Max Verstappen, as we saw with Max Verstappen, rather. Because that's, for me, why Max Verstappen is so good, is because he, against a very good driver in Daniel Ricciardo, proved how good he is, because he was better than Ricciardo in those 3 seasons. If you equal out, and take away for both drivers their reliability failures, Verstappen was clearly the better driver. Ocon goes up against Ricciardo. This is his big chance to prove how good he is, and he has simply failed. Now, he deserves to be on the grid. He's a good midfield driver, but that's all he is. He's never going to be Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc level. He's never going to be that because he just isn't that. And there's no problem with that. Not everyone is, you know, like in basketball, not everyone is Michael Jordan back in the day or LeBron James, or, you know, not everyone in football is Messi and Ronaldo. I think people just need to accept that his place is just, again, that like Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg when he's on the grid. When Sergio Perez is on the grid, he's that level. He's a midfield driver. That's it, and there's no problem with that. But that's his level. He's never going to be up there, winning Grand Prix. Simple as. And yeah, he looked as though maybe he could do that when he came into Formula One, but I don't see how anyone could, you know, see what he's done in Formula One and think he could do that still. I just don't see it. Anyway, enough ranting about Esteban Ocon. That, guys, is it for today's stream. Thank you very much for coming along. I just want to say again, don't forget to subscribe for the content coming up tomorrow. Live race reaction at about 8 p.m. or maybe 8:15 UK time. About an hour and a half-ish after the race finishes, where we'll react for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours to what happened in the Grand Prix. So hope to see you all there. Hopefully including a few more as well, who I know will probably be here talking about what a mental race it is likely to be. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe to that, or for that, you can down below, or go to my channel page and do it there. Don't forget to like this video, share this video as well. Don't forget to join our Discord server. Link below in the description. That server is very active during an F1 race weekend. So if you do want to connect with other F1 fans, that is a great place to do so. We have, I think, just under 500 people in the Discord. So make sure to go over there. Trying to think what else. Email. Don't forget to send me an email if you're, you know, struggling mentally for whatever reason, or if you have some sort of business inquiry when it comes to the channel. Don't forget to send me an email, chazzahdf1@gmail.com. As well, like my Facebook page if you want to. I think it's chazzahdf1 on Facebook. Don't forget to like that. And, you know, if you ever want to get notified for content, you know, just be a regular on that page and you should get notified when I stream and all. Yeah, I think that's it. But yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, for the race reaction. And we should have quite an exciting and action-packed 2020 Sakhir Grand Prix.